Hello, my name is Kahnt, chaplain of Bond University, and today I have the honor of talking with a fellow chaplain, Russ Harmon. Hello, Russ.
Christian.
Now, Russ is the national leader for Lifesaving Chaplaincy in Australia, and the topic today we're looking at is grief and loss. A bit of a hard topic, but nonetheless it happens. And I guess to start off, I would like to ask you, can you give me one example of people you have ministered to in a grief and loss situation, and how you supported them in this difficult time?
Christian, yes, it's always difficult dealing with grief and loss because it's like walking on eggshells. There's not a lot you can say, but the most important thing is that you're standing there with them and walking them through. In Surf Lifesaving earlier this year, a young man drowned on the beach during the Australian titles. We have a chaplaincy tent at the Australian Surf Lifesaving titles, and the officials immediately came to the tent and asked me to quickly come to the beach. They put me in a four-wheel drive buggy and drove me straight down and parked me on the sand right next to the missing boy's parents and asked me to stand with them. All I could do was stand there. I put my hand on the father's shoulder and said, "Would you like me to pray?" And he said, "We've been praying." They were people with the Catholic faith. And I said, "Well, I'll just continue to pray." He said, "Thank you, I appreciate that." And at the point in time, you need to be observant of what was happening. Mum was almost collapsing with anxiety, so I did some practical things. I grabbed a couple of chairs and brought them down near the edge of the water, and they sat down straight away. And then just stood there with them, because there's not a lot you can do. And in the ensuing days, we had chaplains that were available that were part of our chaplaincy team, and they were also members of surf lifesaving clubs in the area where this young man came from, and they did debriefing with young competitors. I did some debriefing with officials. One particular official who was the safety officer. Her husband was the safety officer the day 2 years prior when another fellow drowned during the same competition at the same beach. And so she really couldn't talk, and the next morning I engaged her in one of the official buildings and asked her to explain to me. I needed to know what had happened, and so I took her through a role of debriefing. The other situations in my own club, not long after I joined, they lost a very close member who was only 50 years of age and died. And I was involved, and it's probably leading into the next question regarding conducting a memorial service. On the beach. It was sort of a combined effort from the grieving widow. Had certain elements that she wanted to have included. They were going to sprinkle the ashes on the ocean, form a guard of honour down the beach, and they approached me about gathering the people together and having a minute's silence. And so I did that, grabbed one of the megaphones from the Surf Lifesaving Patrol just up the beach, and called all the people together as they, she actually swam out and went to her husband to the waiting rubber ducky where the ashes were taken, and they sprinkled the ashes, and I just called the people on the beach, around 200 of them, together, and explained what was going to happen, that I was going to ask them to come together for a minute's silence, and then I would do a committal, and which I did, and caused them called into a minute's silence, and after the committal. There are many ways of conducting different services, memorial and funeral services. The general rule of thumb is to find out exactly what elements that the family want in the funeral service, and be very sensitive to bringing those suggestions. If they're doing a funeral service, if I'm ever doing a funeral service, I have a list of things that about the person. It's for the eulogy, and it's a guideline for a eulogy, and then they follow that to build a story of the person's life. And there's many different ways you can help.
So how do you go about conducting a funeral or memorial service if the person who has passed away wasn't a believer, a Christian, such as yourself?
Well, obviously, if you are asked by the family and they know you're a Christian, you know, I've been a minister for 25 years or more. So when I'm asked to conduct a service, they know that they're going to get a Christian service. I am mindful of the family and just how much Christian content they want.
Okay.
But and sometimes I have to fine tune, maybe back off a little as far as the Christian content. But I make no excuses or no apologies for sharing those promises and hope without putting condemnation on the person that may have passed on if they didn't have a faith. But we are mindful that the people we are ministering to at the funeral are people that are still alive,
Yeah.
and are still needing comfort in the future.
So, is a funeral or a memorial service an opportunity to sensitively, depending on context, share the good news?
Again, you need to be led by the Holy Spirit on just how much of what you can share. I think, Christian, the fact that they have asked you and they know you're a Christian, you've just got to be wise, and I think with proper training you can be diplomatic enough to be able to share the hope and to offer an opportunity. And most funerals I do, and I've done a lot of non-Christian funerals, I've been able to share the aspects of the gospel.
Wonderful. Okay. So I know it's always been a tricky situation in, like you said, not heaping condemnation, but at the same time being sensitive as to whether there's an opportunity to have the salvation message proclaimed.
God is the God of hope, and I think we need to be ministers of hope.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, that was really, really good. Thank you so much again, Russ.
You're welcome.
Subject 8, client issues and referrals. Hello, my name is Christian Kahnt, chaplain at Bond University, and today I have the opportunity to talk with Russ Harmon, a fellow chaplain, who is the national leader of Lifesaving Chaplaincy Australia. Hello, Russ.
Hi, Christian.
Dealing with client issues and referrals today. And just to start off, to you, why is it important for chaplains to understand their boundaries in their role?
Probably boundaries is a good word, but I think limitations is probably a better one, in the sense that you need to have a good list of referrals, especially in your given field or the area where you are. You need to have a referral list where people can go that's close by, because there are a lot of issues that we aren't trained to do.
Exactly.
We're not meant to. It's not pastoral care.
Absolutely. And so, leading on to that, what are some of the referral protocols that are in practice in the organisation you minister?
The protocols is obviously you've got to assess yourself. You're the first person to assess what you think, you feel the problem is, and then talk to them, talk to the club. They have areas or managers that deal with this sort of thing, and you work in conjunction with the organisation you're working in.
Okay. Now, sometimes crises happen. You can't plan for them. And can you give an example, maybe fairly recently, where you dealt with someone in a crisis, and when you thought, okay, I got to start referring them on from this point onwards?
Straight away coming to mind, there's no immediate issues. There was one recently in the football world where the person sought me out because of their emotional situation, mainly because they'd moved interstate. They were at that point of retirement. They weren't dealing well with that, and I detected that there are other deeper issues, depression, nervous, others and other sort of areas underlying, and felt that they needed some ongoing care that I never had the time to give, and so I referred them.
Very good. So what are some possible professionals or organizations you refer people on to if they have, let's say, a mental health issue?
I can't answer that one.
That's okay.
In the sense that I haven't had to deal with a mental issue.
That's fine.
It's emotional wise. I mean, there are a lot of organisations in any given area, and the people that are listening to this would have to find out and get a referral list that's suitable for their own area and their own region.
Yep. In my context, I would refer them on to the university psychologist.
Okay.
In my case, what about emotional crisis? Any referrals there, or necessarily?
Well, depending on the skills of the chaplain,
Okay.
in the years of ministry that I've been involved, I obviously can deal with these issues myself as a trained counsellor per se. But a lot of emotional problems are mainly require listening.
Very good. Very good.
And support. Yeah.
What about a spiritual crisis?
I'm also equipped to deal with that. And the chaplains that I recruit, part of the vetting or the monitoring that I do with them includes discovering whether or not they're mature enough as Christians to deal with spiritual issues. Yeah.
And finally, among these crises, what about domestic violence?
Yes, well, that's a number one hotspot for a lot of different situations in both of these organisations I'm involved in. But again, it gets back to pastoral care. The referral side of things is there are a lot of counselling that you can refer people on to. I do relational counselling, so myself, I mostly deal with it myself.
Okay. Good. Now, has there ever been an example of these crises that have turned violent? And how did you respond?
No, I've never had a violent situation.
Okay, thank goodness.
No.
All right. Has there ever been a situation where you were so impacted by the crisis that you yourself needed to be debriefed?
I've never found that to be the case, Christian. I think anyone who enters into chaplaincy or pastoral care need to be equipped to be able to hand over things to the Lord. He's far more able.
Well, that's a debriefing right there.
Absolutely, and I do my best and let God do the rest.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Russ, in the area of client issues and referrals.
Thank you.